The idea, insight, or secret you need for massive impact is just moments away. It's time to claim your career crown. The podcast where business owners and entrepreneurs share the keys to the kingdom to help you open the vault to your greater success.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Strategic Sales Queens Claim Your Career Crown podcast. I'm your host, Lynn, the Strategic Sales Queen, and I'm joined by our special guest, Paige Arnof-Fenn. And today we're going to be talking about how to choose high impact activities and play to your strengths. And, I want to take a step back right here because many of us spend our days busy but not always productive, focusing on tasks that drain energy instead of driving results. And Paige is here to share how to identify the activities that truly matter, align with your strengths, and create real impact both in work and in life. So I am so excited for this episode. And if you love the show, you love the episode, take a moment to subscribe and to leave us 5 stars. We'd very much appreciate it. Now, Paige is the founder and CEO of Mavens Moguls, a global branding, and marketing firm. She works with clients from Microsoft to venture-based startups and nonprofits, helping them grow with smart strategic action. Paige is a seasoned speaker, columnist for Entrepreneur and Forbes, and serves on multiple boards. Paige, I am just so thrilled to have you here today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lynn. I'm excited to chat today.
I think it's going to be a really good conversation. And so as we start, let's take a step back to have you give us some backstory, because I'd love to hear what inspired you to focus on helping people choose high impact activities.
So I kind of came to it in a circuitous route, to be honest. Out of college, I graduated from college in the 80s. Michael Douglas had just won the Oscar for the first Wall Street movie. I became completely enamored, and I beelined to New York City, and I was a financial analyst on Wall Street, my first job out of college. I realized pretty quickly what makes a great movie does not necessarily make a great career path. So I had made a 2-year commitment to the firm, and I kept to my word. But as soon as my commitment was done, I applied to business school, and I went back for an MBA and rebranded myself and started a summer internship in marketing between first and second year. I loved marketing. I went back after graduation, and I've been marketing ever since. My first chapter of my marketing career, I worked for big consumer products, packaged goods companies, Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola. So big corporate marketing jobs, big budgets, big well-established brands. Then when the internet started taking off in the mid to late 90s, I kind of got bitten by the .com bug, and I quit my big cushy corporate job at Coke, and I headed up marketing for an internet startup no one had ever heard of before. I think my mom and my boss thought I was having a nervous breakdown, but I just was so excited by everything I was reading about these companies, tech-based venture-backed startups that had raised, millions of dollars, and they were going to kind of go change the world. And I thought if I didn't give it a shot, I'd be missing out and I'd regret it the rest of my life. And I worked for 1 startup out in Los Angeles and 2 here in Boston. They all had really good exits. I call them my 3 base hits, and made a little money 3 times, but I didn't work for Google or Facebook or any of the big tech companies. So I'm not Sheryl Sandberg. I did not make $2 billion, but I made a little money 3 times, had a ball. And then when 9/11 hit, I had just gotten bought out of my 3rd startup, and I hung out a shingle. A lot of people needed marketing help after 9/11, and It seems crazy now, but the stock market had dropped several hundred points, which at the time was like a shock wave. Now I feel like the stock market drops a couple hundred points every week. We don't even blink anymore. But back then it was a huge deal. So a lot of companies cut their marketing, fired their marketing teams. They wanted to conserve cash. So I knew all these companies that needed help. I knew investors and board members who reached out and said, you helped me before with a portfolio company. Could you come back and do it again? And even though I had never worked on the consulting side or the service side of the business, I was always the client. My husband said, Paige, you know what to do. Roll up your sleeves and help these people. So I sent him an invoice. I called a bunch of people who I loved working with earlier in my career. All of them had been laid off after 9/11. I had people, I had projects, and I just started putting them together. I called the women the marketing mavens, the guys the marketing moguls. For short, I call them Mavens and Moguls. And we've been at it now for over 24 years. So
Wow.
it's crazy. It's like I said, it's been not the path I thought I would take, but it's been very fun. And I've learned a ton and I've had a ball.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. I love that story. And I love the Mavens and Moguls. Yeah. So, what and how do you define high impact activities? Because I'm really curious, because everyone's going to just, we really need to sort of set the baseline for how we're describing this.
So it's not what you think or what I think or your best friend or your neighbor. You know, that's kind of a nice to have. You've got to go back to the data. And so, if you really want to see what moves the needle, you can't be emotionally attached to the outcome. I think you need to track and measure and actually see what moves the needle, what is getting through, what messages, what's causing people to click and convert, what are the breadcrumbs. With everything online being so measurable and trackable, Google Analytics, you can put free things on your website and watch and see how are people clicking, what are the breadcrumbs, what's getting them to the path where they click on something, read about it, answer your quiz or whatever the call to action is, and then pull the trigger and say, okay, I want to talk to these people. I want to hire these people. So really, it's instead of show me the money, it's like show me the data, because I feel like, unfortunately, a lot of people, they fall in love with their ideas or they fall in love with a campaign that they put together. They think it's clever or smart or funny. But if it doesn't resonate with your audience, it doesn't matter. So for me, impact is about results. It's about moving the needle. It's about selling more of your stuff. So what's getting people, to the point of, I can't live without this. It's not a nice to have, it's a have to have. And
Yeah.
that comes down to sales.
Yeah. It's the yes. And I love what you just said, because it is the client who makes the decision, or your prospect who makes the decision to say yes to become a client, and not focusing on their thinking and not paying attention to those. So those are those high impact activities. And I love how you described this. It's really quite unique and refreshing to hear that, because in my mind, I was actually thinking of something totally different. So, why do so many people end up spending time on tasks? Because that was sort of like I was thinking, that don't move the needle.
I think it comes down to just, you know, people like to feel like they're doing something that's smart or, interesting. And it's like telling yourself a story. When people reach out to me and they say, I really don't understand why we're not selling more of our product or our service, because everybody tells me what a great idea it is. They all, tell me, this is wonderful. I wish I had known about this. The problem is talk is cheap. And depending on who you ask, you have to talk to your actual customers or influencers who impact the customer buying decision. It's not, it's not market research if you're talking to people who are not in that chain of decision making. It doesn't matter what your neighbor, your friend, your cousin, your mom, if they tell you they love it, they think it's the best idea since sliced bread, but they're not your target audience, it doesn't count. It just doesn't matter. And so when people come to me and they say, why aren't we selling more of our stuff? I'm always like, show me the data. Did you do market research? Who did you talk to? What did you ask them? How did you ask them? And they said, well, we didn't do any formal research, but I just I keep hearing from everybody how much they love our idea. And the problem is with research, it's like garbage in, garbage out. If you don't ask the question in an objective way, and you don't talk to people who either influence the buying decision or actually are the buyer, you're not getting good information. You have every product or service has a primary, secondary, tertiary audience that they're talking to. Yes, you want to talk to the end user, the buyer who actually is going to make the decision. But there are a lot of people in the food chain. It could be the chief financial officer. It could be a procurement department. There are a lot of people that influence that buying decision. The media, are they writing about you? Are they talking about you? When they do roundup articles, are you even in the discussion? Do you need to talk to that financial person who needs to see a return on the investment, not just an article about all the features or benefits that you offer? So you have to know who you're talking to, what matters to them, and what's going to get them in your corner. With research, if your target audience is not giving you positive feedback, then something's missing. Is it the message? Is it the package? Is it the price point? You have to dig in deeper. You can't make assumptions of why people aren't buying. They say you can drive a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So what is it that they're interested in, and why aren't they pulling the trigger? What's stopping them from closing the loop? So you really, and again, research doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't have to take forever. You could do a Survey Monkey or a Zoomerang, but you've got to ask the question in a way that's objective. Because if, you ask somebody, what do you love about this idea? They're not going to want to hurt your feelings. They're not going to give you a straight answer. And your friends and family are never going to tell you the baby's ugly. That's just not the way it works. They love you. They don't want to hurt your feelings. And so if you're not talking to real customers or real influencers, you're not going to get a straight answer.
Yeah. No, I so agree with you. I call this the voice of the client, and so many people do project. They project their thoughts or their feelings on every situation. This falls true in everything in sales.
Exactly.
Oh, somebody's not calling me back because they don't like me, or they don't want to talk to me, or they're not interested. No, they're not calling you back because they're freaking busy. Okay. So this happens all the time, and I see it in the marketing as well. It's like, if you're not speaking your client's your prospects, love language, so that because the price point can also be because they don't understand the value. You haven't
Exactly.
conveyed to them, why this matters to them. Because you haven't used their language to describe the outcomes, the results, the transformation.
Right. You don't
And
want to be a nice to have. You want to be a have to have.
yeah, I love that old Tom Hopkins, right? I need it, I want it, I gotta have it, right? And so that's such a
And if they
classic.
feel that way, they're going to call you back. That's
Yeah,
that's not, if they see the value proposition, if they think you're going to save them time, save them money, be a more convenient solution to the problem they have, they are going to beat a path to your door. If they don't see any of that, it's just not a priority. They got a lot of things going on, a lot of balls in the air, and they're going to kind of go fight those fires before they follow up with you. That's just life.
yeah, absolutely. And I had a question in here that for the interview, because from when we didn't know how we were going to go around this topic of the high impact activities, now I'm looking at it and I'm going like, okay, this doesn't really fit, because it's about how can someone identify what they're naturally good at, enjoy doing most, because that's not pertinent to this. So if we put a spin on it, how can someone identify, how they can naturally, pull in this information? You gave us some ideas with some surveys, some things like that, but how can they also create that opportunity so that their prospects, their influencers, their clients can actually want to give them this information, but give it to them as you said, in this non-biased, very objective manner.
So,
And I'd
yeah,
love to
so
hear like a twist on that.
sure, think about what are natural strengths for you. If
Okay.
you like to tweet, then by all means, set up an account on X. If Instagram or Pinterest really plays to your strengths, by all means, go that route. The problem I see is a lot of people spread themselves too thin and they think they've got to be everywhere and talk to everybody. And that's just not the case. I mean, when I worked for Coca-Cola, you know, it's a mass marketed brand. So running a Super Bowl ad or, sponsoring the Olympics makes a lot of sense because you're talking to millions and millions of people. But, I'm a B2B service firm. I don't need a million clients to have a great business. So know who your audience is, know what they find useful and compelling, and then overlay that with what resonates with you and what's authentic to you. LinkedIn is a great platform for B2B because
Yeah.
it's professional. You want to be a thought leader, you want to be well respected in your industry, you can publish on LinkedIn. I can look at your profile and see how many contacts we have in common. It gives me trust in you. I can do back channel kind of research and find out more about you and your business because of all the overlapping groups we're in and people we know. So, LinkedIn makes a lot more sense for someone like me or you than like Instagram or Pinterest. That's not how our clients are going to find us or trust us. So you
Yeah.
want to build a relationship in a way that's relevant to you, that gives your audience an opportunity to follow those breadcrumbs. And what you're doing is you want to build a trusted brand and use all the levers that are out there that contribute to building that strength of a relationship. Um,
Yeah.
but just because other people are really good on X, if that does not really resonate with you, if you feel like it's not showcasing your talents and skills in the best light, you don't need to be there. a lot of people feel like, oh my God, I need to start a blog. I need to start publishing articles. My feeling is if you like writing and you're a good writer and it's a good way to showcase your product or service, then by all means, there are a lot of outlets for content today. But the problem is people start a blog because, quote, everybody's got a blog, or I feel like my competitor's blog is so good. If you don't even know if you like blogging or if you're committed to blogging, I would recommend that you start small and build as you go. Start contributing to other people's blogs that get a lot of traffic in your industry. And every time you answer a question or post something, put your contact info and see what kind of traction you're getting. But always be that voice that, makes the smart comment, or if you want to showcase your humor or whatever. The problem is if somebody starts a blog and really hasn't gotten into the habit of blogging at all, the first week they are so excited and they put 3 posts up and people are commenting and they keep the conversation going. And then the next week they're really busy, crazy week. They only got 1 post up and they didn't even have a chance to check and see if anybody made comments. The third week they're at a conference all week, so they didn't post anything. Then they came back, they were buried, and they only got 1 post up. And then they were traveling again on vacation. So the problem is what you've done is you've trained your audience to say, you know what, I'm kind of flaky. I'm not really committed to this. And again, your whole purpose is to build that trusted relationship and that bond with your audience. So if you're not committed to blogging, by all means, do not start a blog. Start with contributing to other people. Or a newsletter. There, people say, "Oh, I'm going to do a weekly newsletter." Don't start with weekly. Start with monthly or bi-monthly or quarterly. But set the expectation and manage the expectation. Because if you tell people you're going to be there every Friday and you're only there every month, they're not going to follow you. They're not going to trust you because you kind of did a bait and switch. So I just feel like you have to be honest with yourself, think about who your audience is, how they make decisions, and what it is that people want to hear from you about. No one's looking for me on Facebook. That's not how I get clients. So you don't need to do it just because everyone else is doing it or your competitors are doing it. Do it because it makes sense for you. And I think if you do that, you will not spread yourself too thin. I don't think you need to be on every platform. Pick 1 or 2 that are authentic to you and be consistent about it. You want to have a very consistent message so that you're constantly reinforcing the things that matter to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you just said, and definitely we tried to do all the things initially for our business, and it was just exhausting. You couldn't do anything else.
And you get burned out. And that's just not the way to put your best face forward.
Absolutely. So what's your approach or process for deciding which activities deserve attention each day or week? Because I heard you saying like what feels natural or what feels, once again, you build a muscle for the things that you do consistently. But there's also the other flip side about what your clients, your ideal clients, your prospects perceive as valuable. So what's your take on bringing those two together?
So you want to track engagement. What's getting clicks? What's getting forwarded? If you're doing a newsletter and you see a lot of people are clicking on the links, they're forwarding it to their friends. When people reach out to you, a simple, how did you hear about us? Find out where the traction is happening. Is it because you're giving speaking engagements? Is it from writing? Is it from networking? Are there groups that are more productive for you? You can run around to networking events, 5 days a week, but you're running yourself ragged if it's not leading to good referrals or good connections or actual client work. So again, follow the data, see where the best referrals, the best clients are coming from. I try and, look at every quarter, who are the new clients that have started, and look back and see how did they find you? Who's your best, most productive audience? Who's the source of, were they from introductions? Were they from your website? Were they from articles or connections? How did they find you? And I think if you replicate your best sources, that's that you're paying attention, you're following the breadcrumbs. But if you like doing something, by all means, if you like posting on X, I don't want to stop people from doing it, but just recognize that you're doing it for entertainment for you. That's not necessarily
Right.
going to be how or why people hire you. So, I would just try and focus on it's an 80-20 rule. I think 80% of your business usually comes from 20% of the
Yeah.
activity. And so, we all have limited time every day. We all have limited bandwidth and energy. I try and put, all my time and energy into the things that really matter the most. I I don't waste time on all the different platforms out there, because it's like you said, it's exhausting. And so for me, I know that LinkedIn matters the most. So that really is my top priority. I'm going to carve out time every week to leverage LinkedIn as a platform. But I'm not going to waste 1 minute of my life doing stuff on the platforms. You can be kind of a lurker, or looky look on things because you like to follow other people and see what pictures they're posting or where they ate or what meals they cook. That's fine. But don't pretend like you're doing it for work, because it's probably, if you're being honest, that's probably not how you're growing your business.
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't have time. I don't choose to spend any of my time with that type of stuff. But I love where we are going with this, because this is really coming back to how do I balance high impact work with the urgent demands that, come on, they constantly crop up.
Absolutely. And again, you know, some people need a coach or someone to kind of give them the guardrails so that they stay focused. Other people, may have like a buddy that, they use for networking, or, to make sure that they're getting out to events face to face. In this world of artificial intelligence, I think we all have to be very careful on the sales and marketing front, because if you're just using the same hashtags and keywords as everyone else in your industry, you're going to blend into the wallpaper. You're never going to stand out. You have to remember what's unique, special, and different about you and your brand, so that every time your audience has a problem that your product or service can help them solve, you want them to think of you first. And for me and my clients, I try to remind everyone and myself, it's not about artificial intelligence. It's about authentic interactions. You want to be able to find what's unique, special, and different about you and your brand and reinforce that consistently in everything that you're doing. And I think the best examples today are the people that are being, authentic and genuine, not generic. I think, it's very easy today to feel like you're losing ground with all the fancy tools and technologies and all the chat GPT and Claude and Perplexity. Everyone's kind of jumping on the AI bandwagon. But what makes you special is your humanity. It's not the AI. So what is your origin story? The good, the bad, the ugly. Only you as a human can tell about the warts and the pimples and the mistakes you've made, the lessons you've learned. I think it's when you show your vulnerability, that's what people connect with. That's how you build an emotional connection to your brand. And that's what people remember. So, it's not just, everything's perfect and, all the pictures are photoshopped and everything looks, you're using all the buzzwords and jargon. No one's going to remember that. You're not going to connect with prospects by just kind of sugarcoating everything. They want to hear about, how did you learn this so well? How did you know how to do this? Well, I knew how to do it because I screwed up. And let me tell you the story when it didn't work well and how I turned it around. That's what people are going to remember. That's what they're going to latch onto. It's the authentic connection that you can make with them. It's not the kind of, pretty pictures and perfect stories. Nobody's going to believe it anyway, but you're not going to connect with them emotionally unless you're more honest and authentic.
Yeah, that's so true. And AI is a fabulous tool, but there's never going to replace the creativity and the unique humanness that we bring to the table. And at the end of the day, people buy from people, So,
100%.
and we build our relationships and we make our decisions with the people that we surround ourselves with. So, what should listeners do next to start prioritizing high impact activities? Just one thing that they really should do and implement in their business, this week, next week.
So one thing you could all do, go open a Google browser, and I would do what I call a communications audit. Type in the name of your company, type in your name. What pops up? Are the links that are there, is that what you want to be known for and what you stand for? Or does a bunch of digital dirt come up and it's kind of a hot mess? You see lots of different sites and platforms and messages and kind of crazy things. Before someone's going to agree to meet with you or return your phone call or invite you to be on their podcast, they want to see who this person is. Do they clean up well? Is this worth my time? And so people say, I would never Google myself. That's so, egotistical. No, I think you actually do need to know what's out there.
Yeah.
If we learned anything during the pandemic, it's that if you don't have an online presence, you don't exist today. So really, I think
It's true.
It can kind of go either way. Either you're invisible, your name is like Susan Jones or Bob Smith, and they can't figure out who you are, or, it's so generic. Or On the other end, it's going to, your name happens to be the same as a serial killer, a porn star, and they're like, oh my God, this can't be the same person. And you want to make sure that you get one chance to make a great first impression. So make sure that people can find you and see that you are an expert in your field. And if you do have a generic name, or if you do share a name with someone who's kind of unsavory, maybe you need to put your LinkedIn profile in your signature bug so that when people want to look you up, they get right to you, or you have a link to your website. That's what's going to make them realize, okay, this person cleans up well. This is someone I should want to go meet for lunch or coffee, or I would like to call this person back and connect with them. They look really interesting, and this is exactly my audience. So I think that's really important that, that you're in on the joke, if you will, because if people can't find you, if they don't know if it's you, if it is confusing at all, the whole point of having a brand is to build that emotional connection and to build trust. If you're not a brand, you're a commodity, and commodities compete on price, and that is not a sustainable business model. Anybody can drop their price, but if you're a brand, you can charge a premium. If they can see you and find you and trust you, they're going to want to keep the conversation going. They're going to want to learn more. So that is something you can do today. Check out how you're showing up online. What are the 2 things that you stand out and you want to be remembered for, that you're better than any of your competition? You can't stand for 10 things. You can stand for 1 or 2 things. I think if you spread yourself too thin, if there's too many messages out there, it's confusing, and, people aren't going to invest that much time and energy to try and figure it out. And you got to make sure that you show up consistently online and offline. If people run into you at a networking event, maybe at the gym, maybe on the soccer field for your kid's soccer game, is the same person showing up. If you talk a good game online and you're very polished and buttoned up on LinkedIn, but every time they see you in person, you're kind of a hot mess and you look like you're disheveled and running late and, crazy, they're not going to have the highest regard for the brand that you're building on LinkedIn, because it doesn't seem to kind of sync up with what they're seeing in person. So I definitely would encourage all the listeners today, everyone listening to the podcast, check yourself out online and make sure that the messages that are out there are consistent and that it's the brand you want to project. Because if you're not, you're working at cross purposes. I think it's a lot easier when you kind of have those breadcrumbs that tell a consistent story.
Absolutely. Paige, thank you so much for sharing how to choose high impact activities that work and play to your strengths. I know that our audience is going to want, you've already gone so deep, but they're going to want to know more about you and how they can connect and find more information.
So the 2 best ways to find me are my website, mavensandmoguls.com. It's MAVENSANDMOGULS.com. Or, as I said, LinkedIn's my platform of choice. You can see my last name is hyphenated, but on LinkedIn, it's all smushed together. Paige Arnof-Fenn, no hyphen. One of my clients always says, between the ampersand in my company name and the hyphen in my personal name, she's like, they're just too many words to remember. All I remember are Paige and Mavens. So if you Google that, you can find me right away. Thank God for search engine optimization. It actually works. So any of those ways are great ways to find me.
All right. And for those of you who are joining us right now, I've added that to the live stream. And for those of you who are watching or listening afterwards, it's in our episode notes. So Paige is just a click away for you. And thank you, Paige. And thank you for all of our listeners who joined us today. This has been a really deep and informative discussion. And I am so grateful for you, all of our listeners, and especially Paige, thank you so much. I really appreciate your joining me today and being part of the conversation.
Thanks, Lynn. It's been great.
What was your biggest takeaway from this episode? I would love